Hello all! It is ADHD Awareness Month, and given that I am one said fool with ADHD, I wanted to take this moment to talk about some of the things that I do to maintain some remnant of the facade that I am a functional human being. Actually, October is basically designed to be Validate the Artemis Month, given that it features not only ADHD Awareness Month, but also Latinx Heritage Month, and Ace Week, and the monster validating trimmings of Halloween. If you're new here and didn't realise, yes, I am an aromantic, asexual, biracial, autistic cryptid with ADHD. I make videos about life and art through the lens of my lived experience and creative brain. So, welcome to this celebration of randomness, vulnerability, absurdity, and sincerity. But naturally, in true ADHD fashion, that's what we call a tangent. What I'm really here to do today is talk you through some of the hard-earned pieces of wisdom that make the day-to-day management of my ADHD much easier. And since I love alliteration, it's time to talk through 10 tips, tricks, and tools for managing ADHD. The first thing I'd like to discuss with you all relates to state changes and task switching. I've heard people say, just set an alarm like a billion times, and I used to dismiss that right off with a blanket alarms don't work, right? But I've managed to find one way in which they do, usually. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if my brain managed to find a way to break this rule, but it usually works. Basically, I realized the reason the alarms weren't working for me in the first place is because they never actually managed to interrupt what I was doing or shake my brain out of its incredible hyperfocus. And the hyperfocus always is incredible. But on the other hand, if I actually have to perform the state change or completely break from the task I'm doing to turn off the alarm, well then that alarm has a fighting chance. Basically, a persistent alarm will get me out of the shower. And then I'm not going to want to get back into the shower. No, I'm going to want a towel. If I find myself just stuck sitting and not getting up to do other things, I've taken to setting an alarm on my phone for about 10 minutes time, and then throbbing that phone across the room. What will happen now is in the 10 minutes, I will either just get so bored for being sitting in one place without a phone to distract me that I will get up for pure stimulation seeking, or I will wait out those 10 minutes, and then when the alarm starts going off and being really, really annoying, I'll get up to shut it up. Bonus tip, I in particular struggle with getting out of bed in the mornings, and I've heard the distant alarm trick before, but unfortunately it's never quite worked for me. In my morning zombified state, I could never just stop myself from turning that thing off and pottering straight back into bed. So I needed a more complex solution, and I found one. It works really well for me, but I just want to put a quick caveat that it's not going to be accessible to everyone. It requires a certain degree of mobility and money and control over the space in which you sleep, right? But for me, my grand solution is to pair the distant phone trick with a loft bed. Right? A loft bed is like a bunk bed that doesn't have a second bunk on it. I will put some footage of me climbing in and out of my loft bed in the B-roll. Good old B-roll, isn't it fantastic? But yeah, I'm currently in my mother's room so that I don't inconvenience all my family members with my incessant talking, given my room is in the center of the house. But yeah, I managed to do this and realize that a lot of the time when I put the effort in to climb down from my bed, I kind of can't be bothered climbing back up. And if I can, I just make sure that I set an alarm for like 15 minutes from now to before I do that, so that I will then have to come back down again. There's only so many times that I can feasibly convince myself that that is worth doing. So most of the time I just end up switching off the alarm, putting on my onesie, and maybe scrolling through social media or my emails for like 15 minutes. And that does heaps to wake me up. Next up, a tip for avoiding lateness. I naturally will arrive at a place 5 to 10 minutes later than I'm supposed to, which is not quite enough to make everyone hate me, but it's enough to make at least some people hate me. And I've been looking for a way around this for a while, and now I've found one. I definitely want to share it. It's what I call an arrival ritual, and it entails rocking up at the place I'm supposed to be at earlier than I need for the purposes of doing something else. The for something else is actually a really important part of that. Like, there's no way I'm convincing my brain to show up early for no reason. I've tried to do that, it just definitely doesn't work. I need to be there for a reason or I'm not going to be there. For the purposes of my hospitality job, this means ironing my uniform at work before my shift. For performance stuff, I like to arrive early so that I can warm up really slowly without the possibility of being interrupted by someone. And if I'm going to an event with someone, I will ask if we can meet somewhere else beforehand so that we don't have to try and find each other in amongst masses of other people. These all have distinct purposes, and that's why it works. If I can't think of anything specific to what I'm doing to make my arrival ritual, I can always arrive early to play Pokemon Go or get some food. In fact, a lot of the time I will add get food onto whatever my other arrival ritual is anyway, making food my sort of pre-arrival ritual and giving me even more room for error. If I'm late for food, it just becomes grab sushi instead of have a sit-down meal and then wham, I'm basically on track again. Like, it's baffling how well this works considering how much I've struggled with it in the past. And I will say it's not infallible, but it works so much better than trying to convince my brain to show up early for no reason, because that just never works. This one is less of a hack, but I think that it's really important. As the people who live within our own brains, we tend to have a semi-decent idea of what our boundaries are, what we can do, what we can't do. But if you're anything like me, you may be more inclined to approach life with more optimism than realism. But I'm starting to realize that being honest about my struggles, both to myself and to other people, serves me far better than trying to convince myself that this time will be different. This means that if Mum gives me a task to do at a later point while we're having dinner, I'm gonna have to ask to be excused to write in my to-do list or tell her to remind me. Because I know my brain is not gonna retain that information for long enough for it to actually translate into action. I basically have to do it right away or put a system in place to remind me to do it later. And because I've told my mother that, now that expectation has been meted. Now she knows that if something is really important, it's better for me to do it right away. And she's understanding if I happen to forget something that she knows she told me at an inopportune time. Compare this to the time before I started to be really clear with the fact that this was something I struggled with, and you'll notice a massive difference. Before, I would just answer those requests, but yeah, sure. And then when I inevitably forgot, she'd naturally be really upset, because I'd given her the indication that I had everything under control, when I really didn't. This applies in other situations too. Am I crying over something I know is irrational? Maybe I should clue other people in so that they don't jump to the wrong conclusions. Am I freaking out because someone's given me a task so big that I can't brain where the first step is? Maybe I should tell them so that they don't assume that my prolonged silence means I'm getting great work done, instead of sitting there internally going, ah. It can feel embarrassing, almost like you're admitting to failure, or even like a cop-out. But what it really is honesty. It's accepting yourself for who you are. It's communicating, and when you have a relationship of any sort with someone, whether you're working with them, living with them, dating them, whatever, the most important thing is open and honest communication. Next up, I want to talk about something it took me way too long to realize was something I could do. I have this habit of finding a new tool or approach or system for being organized, and it will work so well for me for about a month, and then suddenly it will stop working. And I'd feel really guilty about that, and oftentimes I would just force myself to keep using it even though it was no longer actually helping me. And now I realize that I don't need to do that. Like, I can use a thing for as long as it serves me and then replace it with another thing, and then when I feel like it, I can go back to that first thing, even if it's like 3 years later. Like, that's totally fine. When I shot my gaming video in late July, I was finding structure through Habitica, my Google Calendar, and my whiteboard. These days, I'm mostly relying on Trello, O-Waves, and my bullet journal. I don't need to feel like a failure for needing variety in my organizational structures. That's what works for my brain, so I'm embracing it. Okay, so I talk too much and that's like 0.4 of 10, so I'm going to try and speed through the rest of these. Let me know if I succeed. We'll see. Alrighty, here's a tip for not forgetting stuff. There's no such thing as later. Do it now or write it down now. Telling yourself, oh yeah, I'll do it later, absolutely useless, will not serve you. Do you really think your brain's going to remember in the ominous later? Pull it out of the recesses of bullshit that go on in your brain? No, of course not. Of course not. Either assign it a time in the future, whether that's putting it in your calendar or adding it to your ever-growing to-do list, or just do it now if you can. Like, you will still forget stuff if you do this, almost guaranteed, but if you don't do this, forgetting is certainly guaranteed. And I'll take the odds of almost over certainty almost every time. This includes stuff like follow-up appointments. You will forget to book another one, so just do it before you leave. And make sure you put it in your calendar before you step away from the front desk or exit out of that Zoom call. Like, please, Artemis. Please do that for me. And yeah, I've said to write things down a couple of times now, but really, writing lists is only useful if you're actually going to look at them. Like, I used to write lists on whatever random piece of paper I could find lying around the house, which was great for convenience, but it was really bad for actually getting the stuff that I was writing down done, because my crap were those lists easy to lose. I thought lists on the Notes app on my phone would be a good alternative to this, but no. I don't know if you can add titles to your notes, and I've just never bothered, but currently the only indication to the contents of each note in my phone is the first line of each note, right? So, for example, I have one that is currently titled A, just the letter A, that's it. One that says September 21st, 2020, very informative, and one more that says put self in bin, recycling computer. Now I'm pretty sure that last one has something to do with my short film The Virus, but given a month's time, would I have been able to apply that context to the random jumble of words? Like, I don't know if I could, and I absolutely had no clue what the other two mean, like, way over my head. If I were to go into my Notes app right now, looking for something specific, I can't guarantee that I would find it before getting bored or overwhelmed or distracted, and that's just not useful. I at one point tried putting everything into a single sticky note list on my computer, just anything I thought of I'd whack into that list, and speaking of overwhelming, yeah, eventually that list got so long that I couldn't even read it. There's literally no point in writing things down if you don't go back to look at it, so you have to find a way to want to look at it. I don't know what that means for you. It could be a whiteboard. It could be a beautifully decorated bullet journal. For me, it's about having lots of little lists in the one place, so I know where I need to look, but I'm also not overwhelmed by having all of the information in my face at once. I have different pockets to focus on. Whether that's a day of the week or a particular project I'm working on, it's separated, but it's still all kept together. That's what works for me, but you've got to find what works for you. The next tip's not a fun one, but my god, is it true? Deadlines suck, but they're your best friend. I personally find it really hard to even perceive a task as real if it doesn't have the time pressure of a deadline on it. This is why I'm so specific with all my goal setting, right? It's never, I will make more short films, it's, I will make a short film every month for a year, even if that means that the quality is variable. I've gotten into the habit of asking for deadlines for things, because whenever you can means never to me. I've learnt that now, and like I said earlier, it's important to keep others clued in too. Deadlines where I owe someone a thing work the best, like the time I signed up to do a show at Melbourne Fringe with only a vague idea of what I wanted to do in said show. I knew that if I didn't write the thing, I'd be letting a whole load of people down, as well as losing a decent chunk of money between registrations and paying for the labour of collaborators, advertising, the venue, etc. So yeah, I had to get it done, and I got a lot of great work done because of that deadline. But if I didn't manage to do it, that would have been bad. Community deadlines, things like NaNoWriMo, can help me progress, but I oftentimes find myself falling short at the finish line because the consequences don't feel real enough. Now, letting myself down, that is a very real consequence. But I'm trying not to lean too hard on that one, because In the event I don't actually get what I'm trying to do done, I can end up breaking myself. I'm still trying to work out where the line between self-accountability and self-destruction is. It is not easy. That is why deadlines suck. But really nothing else works quite as well. Tasks without deadlines don't work for a number of reasons, but a big one is because time is fake. If, like me, you are bewildered by the concept of time passing, I'd like to recommend a thing I've been doing rather recently, which is tracking how I spend my time. Now, I've been using the app O-Waves for this, but there are plenty of other apps you can use, or spreadsheets. Technically, O-Waves is meant to be a scheduling app, but I actually find it impossible to stick to a schedule. After trying to use it for its intended purpose for a couple of days and instead just editing it to match what I was actually doing, I realized that it was helping me in an unintended, different way. It was making me conscious of how I used my time, which carried with it some unexpected benefits. Firstly, I started to realize that I've been doing more work than I thought I did. Even for all the times I got distracted, I was still dedicating massive portions of my day to getting stuff done. And I realized that a lot of the time, I'd been beating myself up for no reason. Further down the line, I could see that it was affecting the way I wanted to spend my time as well. It didn't make me happy to see large swaths of time dedicated to scrolling through social media, but sometimes I still needed a break. So I started choosing to read a book, or play a video game, or message a friend. This likely would not have worked out well for me if I'd started it during my burnout period of July and August, but for everyday Artie, it's helping me to remember to take breaks. That it's okay to stop and sit in the sunshine for a while. That I am doing okay, and that trying to force myself to work when I'm not feeling it helps no one. I worked out that I was asexual out of spite and competitiveness, and I just want to say that there is nothing wrong with letting that side of your personality fuel you if it helps you get shit done. So jump into those word wars, sign up for that competition. Did some foolish knave tell you you'd never make it in this godforsaken town? Well, make sure you make it, and rub it in their face when you do. Past you has only been able to do 10 push-ups? Laugh at your past self as you push past 11. I think the reason that sport, competition, awards, things like that are so prevalent in our society is because the want to prove that you're the very best, like no one ever was, runs pretty deeply in a lot of our natures. So lean into that if it's useful for you. If you have ADHD, you've probably been told by some useless carpet stain that you're wasted potential. You're just lazy. If you're an artist like me, someone's probably told you to get a real job. Now's the time to show them that they don't know shit. Look at all this potential. I eat lazy for breakfast. Get a real job. My job is doing something I love that makes other people feel things. How's that office job working out for you? Just don't let it get to your head. We can have spite and still have empathy. We can compete without being show-offy winners or sore losers. We can have both. And one more thing. Body doubling is just the best, so do it more often. If you don't know what body doubling is, basically it's a working buddy. Someone who is with you while you attempt to do the thing. I usually find it more useful if the people I'm with are also attempting to do a thing, but sometimes I just need someone with me while I clean my room. Body doubling can be harder to accomplish these days, pandemic and all, but sitting in a call with other people who are also trying to get stuff done can still be better than trying to do everything on your own. I can't tell you exactly why it works, but it just does, and I 100% recommend that you give it a try if you can. Okay, so that's it for today's tips. I hope you can find something in here that was useful for you, and if you're one of the new folks that have joined since burnout again, I just want to say, hi! Thanks for sticking around to the end of this very long video. I'm glad that you're here at all, and I hope you can find more stuff on my channel that excites you and makes you happy. Anyway, farewell! Oh wow, it's the end screen, that place where I say thanks to all of my amazing patrons, some of whose names are pictured above, and let YouTube do the thing where it recommends you some stuff. I have links in the description if you'd like to find me elsewhere, but regardless, stay awesome.